All right, today we are diving deep into a problem that costs banks and financial institutions, well, billions of dollars every single year. People not paying back their loans. But what's fascinating is how data scientists are now playing detective, looking for hidden clues that could finally crack this massive, expensive puzzle.
So let's just get right to the heart of it. It sounds like such a simple question, doesn't it? When is the best time to ask for money back? But for the entire financial world, this is a super high-stakes mystery. If you get it wrong, you lose a ton of money. But if you get it right, you could save billions.
And I'm not kidding, we are talking about billions. When borrowers can't pay back their loans, it's a huge risk for the institutions that lent them the money. So the push to find a smarter, better way to handle loan collections, it isn't just about good business, it's about keeping the whole system stable. Okay, so that brings us to our first section, the billion-dollar question. We're going to dig into how researchers are tossing out the old playbook and using data to get to the real truth behind loan repayment. You see, the traditional way of doing this, making collection calls, it often comes down to gut feelings and a pretty small set of data. But what if the real clues were buried in the mountains of information that banks already have? Researchers are essentially becoming data detectives, sifting through all of it to find the patterns that everyone else has been missing. So what kind of tools do these data detectives use? Well, it's not a magnifying glass and a deerstalker hat, that's for sure. We're talking about a really sophisticated digital toolkit built to handle just massive amounts of information.
The first big tool is the data warehouse. The best way to think of this is like the central evidence room for a huge investigation. All the clues, every transaction, customer detail, call log, they all get gathered up from different places and stored right here, all neat and organized, ready to be analyzed.
And inside that evidence room, things aren't just thrown into boxes. Oh no, it's organized in a very specific way. Right at the center of it all is what's called the fact. That's the loan call itself. And then everything else, like who was called, what the loan was for, when it happened, those are called dimensions that connect right to that main event. This structure makes it super easy for the detectives to see the whole story around every single call. So how do all those clues end up in the evidence room? It's a three-step process. First, the detectives extract the raw data from all over the place. Then they transform it, basically cleaning it up, getting rid of the junk, and putting it all in the same format. And finally, they load that perfectly clean data into the warehouse. Now, the real investigation can start. All right, now this is where things get really good. All the evidence is in, it's all organized, and after all that careful work, a really surprising pattern starts to show up. This is the moment the case gets cracked wide open. So just think about it. With all this data perfectly laid out, age, gender, loan type, you name it, what do you think was the single most important clue they found? What was the one key that unlocked the whole mystery? And the answer was just stunningly simple. It wasn't the borrower's job or how much they owed. The single biggest thing that determined if a call would be successful was simply when it was made. It all came down to timing. And just take a look at this. The data could not be any clearer. Call response rates? They're pretty low early in the morning, and they fall off a cliff late in the day. But then there's this huge spike, a golden window really, between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., where people are way more likely to actually respond. But here's where it gets even cooler. As you can see here, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. That perfect time to call, it actually changes depending on how old you are. For younger folks, say 20 to 29, the sweet spot is later, around 2 p.m. But for borrowers over 60, you've got a much better shot earlier in the day, at 11 a.m. So context is everything. So we found this really clear pattern. Awesome. But what's the real-world impact? Why does knowing the perfect time to make a phone call actually matter so much? Well, the impact is like this powerful domino effect. When you start focusing your calls in these peak windows, your collection efficiency shoots right up. That means you can schedule your call center staff more intelligently, which then directly lowers the financial risk for the whole institution. It's a complete shift from just guessing to a super precise, data-driven strategy. And you know, the power of this kind of data detective work goes way beyond just loan collections. The researchers point out that these exact same techniques, finding those strange hidden patterns in huge piles of data, are also a major tool in the fight against really serious financial crimes like money laundering. And that leads us to the final and maybe the most powerful idea here. predicting the future. So far, we've just been using data to understand what already happened. But what if we could use it to stop the problem before it even starts? I mean, figuring out the best time to call, that's a huge win. But the real holy grail is always prevention. Can the same data help banks identify who is a high-risk borrower before they ever miss a single payment? The tool for that job is something called a decision tree. It's a predictive model that works just like a flow chart you draw out. It takes in all the data about a potential borrower and then asks a series of if-then questions to sort them into a risk category, like high risk or low risk. Here's a really simple example of how that works. The model might first check a borrower's salary. If it's high, it moves to the next branch and asks, okay, but what's their credit history like? If their history is good, great, they're classified as low risk. But if their history is poor, even with that high salary, it flags them as high risk. It's an automated way to make really complex decisions based on what's happened in the past.
So we're going to end right where we began, with a simple question. We started this journey by asking for the best time to make a phone call, but where this investigation leaves us is staring at a future where data can predict human behavior with almost scary accuracy. So if data can find the perfect time to call, what else will it learn to predict about us?